Okay, yeah, and here we are, April 23rd, Holistic Systems Cooperative Meeting. So Basil, I think that was, could be like a good segue into, what I'd love to chat about today with everybody and, talk about and, make some decisions or figure out some, like a game plan, how we want to, make decisions, which is like, that's one thing I've been thinking a lot about. Like, how do we find the specialists? And I know that that's an open question, that you're now like specifically working, with Basil. But it's like, how do we find people to work with, that can do, can do different specialties, but within also the realm of like, our businesses being, not like these big established businesses where you hire somebody and then you bring them on for a certain, job and they're in their certain box, so how do we bring people in, but also, at least for me, the question is in a way where they are folks who are interested in, have these specialties and expert areas of expertise, but are interested in working in this more co-owned, DAO type organizational structure. And, that's because I think if there's work and you just have to hire somebody off of Fiverr or Upwork or something like that, you got to do what you got to do. But that's not, what I'm interested in doing, if I can, help it. So, with all of that, right, I think that there's some good questions here about, holistic systems and, what we want to do, how we want to move forward from here. So as we all know, right, like we have our group, mission and, oh, here, let me put I'll put the meeting notes link in the chat. We have our mission, vision, and purpose statements. And so, my thought, I want to just kind of share what I have and what I've come up with as far as like, value share and tokenomics, models. Just I'll try and keep it brief. And then, see what people think. But my thinking is like, I'm looking at maybe like the rest of the year, the rest of 2024, so it's April. So it's like, well, what are, HSC, what are our goals? And, what's our kind of roadmap for the year? What seems reasonable? So I do think that could be helpful to try and establish, now in the next little while. So that way we're all kind of, operationally pointing in the same direction. And then we know, then people know where to kind of, fill in, in what roles, in what way, speaks to them. So, so with that, I'm just looking at my list here. So with that, let me just kind of like share what I have and speak to the, the value exchange and, the tokenomics is an aspect of this. Hopefully folks, I'll share my screen. I don't know if you can get into this Miro board or not. I didn't really have time to get it, to make sure that people could be in it. Yeah, and as I'm sort of talking about this, really to say like, for me, so much of holistic systems, is trying to like solve my own problem, right? Which is like, I want to be involved in so much, and I want to be a part of this, movement and change in the world. And, by myself, my own sort of like siloed, independent contractor or entrepreneur, I feel like I can only be so effective. I only have so many resources. So, how do we pool those, those together in this kind of cooperative, community owned and operated way, in a way that actually helps bring me more time, brings me more space, makes me more effective. And at the same time, does that for everybody. Like the more effective I am, the more effective everybody else is. So, I think, when I've been thinking about it, I'm thinking about it's like, right, a contribution-based community. And I think that's what DAOs are. That's how I'm seeing them. There's just their contribution-based organizations. And so, and what they do is they allow, a larger amount of, a larger breadth of contributions, to that come into the community, and allows for a larger amount of participation. So, in this way, how, putting the kind of framework together, this is really more for like the co-op, the value sharing. To me, there's like two different kind of, I don't actually know if there's two different sets of tokenomics, but I as we go along, I feel like there's, what we're calling phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is like the value sharing community, right? So we're coming together and we may you may find a strategic partner and then work with them, but it's not like the community or the cooperative, the organization that's actually like, selling services to clients. But then there's this second, phase 2, but I'm feeling like now they're both sort of just here, which is, essentially like the cooperative agency services, professional services agency, but that's, co-owned and co-operated. So if we're just looking at the value, the value exchange community, right? So, the first thing is like, how do we assign value to what people are contributing, right? So this kind of contribution accounting, and I'm going to frame all of these as questions, and then also I have, ideas, but they're just ideas. For me, I like the idea of using two different types of like value assignment, and what we're doing with Coordinate is more like a recipient based, right? So there's these pools, and I don't know, I'm just calling them tip pools, or it could be gratitude pools. And so every month there's just a certain amount, everybody gets whatever, 100 tokens, and you then, share that with whoever you feel like, brought a lot of value into the community or value to yourself, right? So that's kind of a recipient based. And then there's more like the standardized or, more objective values, which is, value exchange, which is basically, it starts at this kind of a base of like, like an hour's worth of somebody's time, in like a time bank sort of manner. But then I think, can expand to, like a standardized way, like, okay, so if somebody is an expert on, websites, then then sort of their hour of their time is going to be worth, a certain amount of tokens. So, I think there's a good amount of work to do there, but, the idea here is I think that if you assign value in these two types of ways, it takes like it takes like a competitive market out of the value exchange, right? So it stops that, being like, okay, well now I have to like, I'm better than, I have to be better than this person, or, oh, this is worth more because I've been doing this for like 2 extra years. So, I need to demand more tokens, for my time. Kind of takes that all out and brings it into these community-based methods. All right. So I think that brings in something, need for like this, like an expertise framework is what I'm thinking about it as, which really, it's really just how do we again, assign value. And I think it's, how do we assign value to like a person's, to like services, to skills, so, right. A real basic way is just to say, I have different skills at different levels. I'm an expert or intermediate or a novice, right? And obviously, I think that this would have, to have a kind of a reputation system to track that along the way, to make sure that you know, if I say I'm an expert in something, it's good to have other people's opinions of whether that's true or not. So, you know, that then goes along with, okay, so what do I have here? Value sharing system. All right, so then this is another thing we need. Oh yeah, the expertise framework I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. So we need a value sharing, we just need like a platform, you know? So right now we have like the needs and offerings database. There's this thing, you know, that we're calling, that Kenan came up with. This is Kenan's, I've started one, and I'm just, you know, it's like a whole person resume. So it's basically just saying like, these are all the things that I do. These are all the things that I do. These are all the things that I want to do. You know, Kanan's is great. It's filled out. These are the things that I've just started. These are the things, you know, that I've been doing for years. You know, I don't just work on websites, right? You know, because we can say, oh yeah, I do websites. Well, there's so much in there. Like that's, even if I have a website job, that's still kind of difficult to know how to match people, you know, like to somebody, like I don't work on Wix, right? So I'd have to go and I'd have to learn that, you know, like, do I work on WordPress? Do I work on, you know, like, do I know code? Do I not? So, you know, it allows us, you know, it allows us to get really granular, and then that helps like everybody match up with each other. So this is kind of like the platform, the actual, you know, database, what we're using now, you know, is like the member portal, but there's other ways we can do that. You know, if, you know, if it becomes, you know, needed for the group. Right. And then, you know, there's like the log, you know, and as I'm sort of talking about all this, you know, I'm really trying to bring it down to like these base ideas, rather than starting thinking about like the tokenomics within, you know, a DAO, you know, necessarily. So like, you know, what are like the basic things that we need? Well, we need like a log or a ledger, right? So that could be just a spreadsheet. And it's been great to talk with, you know, these folks at this Fliptown DAO in Uganda, and they're on the ground doing this community value exchange, and they have tokens, but it's not digital. You know, it's on spreadsheets, and they have token IDs. Each token has an ID, you know, and so, you know, it's great to see that, like, you know, the base idea. Now, again, I love the you know, tokenizing in the digital, you know, and on blockchain, but you know, it's okay to, I think about that in different ways. All right, let me move along. So then there's, you know, like the community pool, right? What do we have in the pool? You know, I think we'd have the utility token. What is the utility token? What can you actually do with it? I think the interesting thing about the utility token is that, you know, could then kind of, a lot of this can kind of, you know, bleed into more of that, like selling our professional services. You know, and somebody, right, if somebody doesn't have time to contribute, but they want, you know, me to help with a website, they can pay me, right? And so then could we convert that into co-op tokens? Right, voice tokens, what's in the pool? Could have fiat money in the pool, right? This is just like the shared pool. And then, you know, the real kind of tokenomics. Then there's like the tokenomics, you know, is a lot of that is like the mathematics of it, you know, and how to keep the token supply and demand, you know, at a level where it continues to be, you know, doesn't get too inflated or too depressed, you know, and that's, you know, that's stuff that I'm still learning a lot about, and it can get complex, but, you know, how many tokens, right? Like how many tokens is an hour worth? So there's that. And then I think that there's the larger organizational, you know, pieces, which is like one, which is just the cooperative, right? We have like these mission and vision statements, but what are all the group agreements that we put into place? You know, so what are we deciding as a group? The organization, you know, there's a lot there. And then, you know, membership, like what's, you know, what is a member? You know, like, because there's certain privileges and there's certain accountabilities that come with this, right? So like, you know, one example is we might say, okay, everybody who's everybody who's a member, you have to like contribute at least 1 hour like every month, from like a value exchange. So if somebody, wants help with your services, right? Like if somebody asks you, like you have to at least contribute like 1 hour, or there can be a certain amount, right? So that's, and if you're not actually contributing anything, then you might just go become a community member, right? You might move from like more in the core membership to community membership. So what constitutes that? How do we vote? Um, and the last thing that I really think is interesting. I'll just leave this actually. Yeah, I'll just leave that. So I want to stop talking now, and some of that was, I didn't have like a whole like real polished presentation prepared. It's mostly just kind of like the things that I've been thinking about, and from here, if I had but like if I had a first thought of like what's our goals for the rest of the year, to me, number one might be to actually come up with this kind of like value exchange mechanism, like MVP, if you will. So, because there's a way where right now we don't actually have necessarily the mechanism in place, that we want. I mean, I think it's building, but to like build it to a place where where it's like, oh, okay, there's some, even if it's very basic, I feel like I can exchange tokens. I'm earning tokens. I can see that I have them there. That might be a good goal for the end of the year. And then number two, that I just want to bring in is that I think that it might be valuable, for myself or for all of us or for, whoever, we could divide into divide up the work, but I think it would be valuable to explore other organizations that are doing this kind of work. Because right, and Jonas introduced me to this one called Quorum One, and it's pretty similar. And there's, right, I mean, I'm in touch with GaiaNet, they're working on some things that are pretty similar. As I go along, there's a lot of organizations that have this in mind. The question for me is always, is there something that we're putting together here that's, unique from other ones? And I think, that's actually where, share my screen again. I think that's actually where this framework of these value sharing types, it may or may not be 17. Some of these we might want to combine, but I think that like, if we're judging any kind of like professional, value sharing organization, I think we can kind of look and say like, what is being shared? So if you just take like a professional networking organization, you could say, okay, a professional network, well, they're sharing their referrals and connections. Whoa. So you have like referrals and connections and probably some cross collaboration opportunities, maybe some knowledge and wisdom, that kind of thing. And that's like professional, networking. You could have there's a Skillshare group, right? If it's just more of a Skillshare, right? So there's the sharing expertise. I think that there's a way where this is a helpful framework to sort of see what is everybody doing? What is the value that is being created, within the group? And and then the second piece there is that I don't, I think what we're doing here that might be, unique, is trying to actually get this, like, is to actually create this like tokenization of value and this actual value exchange. And by doing that and putting it in like a DAO framework, then it can really like expand and scale beyond just small groups. So, all right, I think that's it. I'd love to hear what folks think. And I can take notes, and I don't know, just even get some feedback, whether that, makes sense, doesn't make sense, etc.
I'm sometimes having difficulty to say something if there's not not a question that I can focus on. But yeah, I mean, so far I think it made sense. Of course, a lot to still work out the details and what we really want. I guess is that the core question, like what of this do we actually really want, and on how to exactly like implement it and things. Or I'm still trying to get at that a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that's actually, well said. I think it feels to me like we're at a place which is, okay, where do we, I think you said it great. What do we want? And then, how do we implement it? Like, where do we go from here? Because there's a way where we have, right, like we have these bi-weekly skill shares and they're fine, but it's not like more and more people are coming to each one. It's almost like less and less people are coming to each one, which is fine because we're not really advertising them out into the world, and we're not doing that because to me, we're saying, I don't know that we're at this place where we're saying, hey, come here, come join. We have this thing set up that's like working. Right now we're saying, hey, come join, like help build this thing that will work. So, so I think it's a matter of like, and I think that's actually what came from, I'm gonna take a look at these because I haven't actually looked at them for a little while, but I think that's kind of some of what came out of the purpose and mission and vision statements, was like to actually kind of like create this model, so like, what are we doing here? To foster this ecosystem, that transcends competitive models, to create this thriving space, to build here. This is to build a supportive cooperative professionals who share and synergize our collective wisdom, experience, and resources in order to create a resilient and regenerative ecosystem that supports personal growth, thriving livelihood, and societal transformation. All right, well, that's pretty cool. So so does that seem right? I mean, does that seem, Basil or Kim, it seems like part of what we're doing now is we're saying, what are we like, what are we building? And we have, a fairly good sort of idea or vision of it. So what did you say? Jonas, you said it just like, what are we making? What are we building? And how do we?
Well,
yeah.
can I? I mean, what we're building, if it's not apparent in our vision, our mission, and our purpose, then we need to look at that. I think. But
yeah, I mean, does it not feel like, I mean, I feel like it's pretty, I mean, it feels pretty clear to me in those statements. Does it not feel that way to you?
I'd like to know
I think that's probably fine. I was just mainly wondering, like, with the question for today with this contribution-based value exchange, like how you have it there on the Miro. Is that the status quo, and that's what we're going to work to implement and to expand on that, or is it more that, like, we need these ones out of the different fields that we still need to think a little bit more about, okay, how to detail those ones, add more flesh to it. Yeah, that was the thing that was going for me. I think that yeah, vision, purpose, vision, and mission statements, they're good. And I think we all know where, like, what we are trying to achieve here. Although some of it might be a little bit like very hopeful, maybe I can call it that. But yeah, I think the direction is clear.
Yeah, I think, and maybe that's a good question, right? Because obviously, you know, I've been thinking about all this, right, and just jotting down, you know, the notes and then trying to get what's in my head, you know, onto paper or Miro board or something. But that actually sounds like a you know, a good basic question, maybe just to ask everybody to, you know, take whatever I did there, you know, and showed, sort of just put it to the side and to say, you know, and if Kim, if we're not, that's good information. But I do feel like those statements that we wrote are pretty clear. I think now the question is like, okay, what is our plan? You know, and we could even, you know, what's our plan in general? What's the plan for the next, you know, for the rest of 2024 to actually, you know, build this thing so that way it can, you know, it can operate.
So an operations plan.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Or like, yeah, an
I
operations
mean, I
plan,
just didn't know
or
how
even
far
like the
we wanted to
roadmap.
go into I didn't know how far we wanted to go back into the typical organization or, you know, try to stay out of that kind of thing. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. But
Okay.
because I'd like to have an operations plan, I'd like to have goals, I'd like to know where we're going. You know, I'd like to know what we're heading. I understand what we're striving for. Yeah, but we need those action steps on how do we get there? If we're going to be, you know, that organization. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that has an operations. And I think that's kind of been the plan, right? So, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that to me, that's the plan. To me, until we find, you know, an organization that has basically what we're trying to do already operational, then we are still the collaboratory laboratory that's building it.
Okay. So what's next? Is that what you're asking?
I think so. So I think what I offered, you know, in the first, you know, 25 minutes or so was kind of a framework, as just that, you know, as a starting place. So
Right.
So I think now, you know, what I'm asking is like, I guess I'm asking all of us, like, okay, what is the plan? You know, like how do we like that? You know, what do we like? What don't we like within, you know, what I presented? Does that seem in alignment? And then, you know, and then what are the steps? You know, I think, you know, I think like you know, I think the first thing to decide is like, you know, to make sure that like we're sort of on the same page as far as like what we're building. You know, more like in an operational sense rather than like, you know, the large picture sense. So, you know, does what I presented in a big picture sense kind of make, you know, like fit in with the framework of what you know, what we're building together? Or, all right, let me try and simplify it. Like, well, okay, like what do we, you know, all right, so let's just go around like what's the plan? I think we all do have a good idea of what we're trying to create. So in a basic way, like what's the plan? What do you like about what I presented? What don't you like? What works? What doesn't work? I think you know, the idea is still like we want to build the MVP of this. And when I say that, just meaning like like what does this thing look like when it's operational, but it doesn't have to be like the final end product. You know, does it need to be digital? Does it not? Yeah.
So one thing for me that I'm thinking about, that there are two conflicting things in some way for me. So one is I really like these kind of contribution accountings with Coordinate and having sort of this token system and assigning those ones for value. On the other hand, there's I like to have it more personal, and like everything with tokens, it makes it a lot of code. Also, that's just one thing that I just mentioned. But yeah, so I do like having these tokens. If they are of any utility, though, and I sometimes I dream of worlds where we do a lot of things with tokens that we distribute for actual value that's being created or that's being shared. But yeah, if they are supposed to have any utility, then they do need to have concrete value with it. And I'm wondering, like, how would we get to that, that these tokens in Coordinate have concrete value? This is something that I feel like it might be difficult if it's only a small network, because usually tokens, they do have value if you can use them to get something that you want. And the smaller the network, the harder that is, I think. But it might work still. Anyway, that's just the thoughts that I've had right now. Basil, you want to say something?
Yeah, so I've been so my plan with the D Studio Honey tokens, even if for ease, we might use like a Coordinate token that then is like transferred, or is then translated, exchange for the honey. The utility of the honey is so that people can get, just like with credit card points or airline miles, they get discounts on their future flights, on their future productions, on their future things. So for D Studio Honey, then when people are when we're selling services, like we're starting to move into like full sales, what we can also tell those customers is like, look, in addition to as part of our loyalty program, effectively, you're also eligible to receive these D Studio honey tokens, which can be redeemed later for services. Since I don't want to like speak out too far and set up expectations, I want to start by just capturing internally those things. So if we have an account record of people paying like $1,000 a month for podcast services or whatever it is, and we're going to give them 10% of that in honey. They don't even need to know about it right now as much as we just need to be able to keep track of it. And when we're ready to come back to them and say, hey, for your service, you now receive this, here's how this can be used. So that's within the D Studio ecosystem. The HSC co-op token, which is Holistic Systems is in the name, it's a broader scope of services and people types. So theoretically, those co-op tokens could be used in a similar way with a similar utility to receive services. Ultimately, what we want in our ecosystem of tokens is that we can exchange co-op tokens for honey tokens and hypha tokens and as ecosystem tokens. But each one of those utility tokens needs to have, like you say, have a value, have a purpose. And so even if that's not like a liquidity pool for cash value back yet, which we aren't going to have anytime soon, that could be a future thing. So you can exchange your tokens for cash or for Ethereum or whatever. But definitely every company, every startup that's a service type organization providing a service, and people are spending money for that service, then these tokens can be used like loyalty, just like credit card points, just like airline tokens, but they happen to be crypto and they're easy to move around, and ultimately within like the hypha ecosystem and beyond, we can start to create trade relationships between other tokens, other organizations, so that like somebody could pay for DStudio services and get DStudio honey tokens, but then they need like some other services that some other organization on the ecosystem provides, and then they can exchange those DStudio tokens via a trade relationship between DAOs. Like, yeah, they can redeem their honey for our services over here because we'll be happy to take on the honey because we happen to need production services all the time. So when I was starting the community tokenomics model for Tulsa, Oklahoma, it was like this, to create the circular. It's like person A goes to work with the Green Corps permaculture farmer incubator. Then they go do some services, and then they get these tokens to measure their service, to like help a family set up a farm in their backyard. And they get those tokens. Then there's the local coffee shops and restaurants and spas and yoga studios that will then accept those tokens based upon an agreement with the token provider. Like, yeah, we'll accept those for discounts or for whatever, free coffee, whatever. And so then those tokens then get exchanged for that product by that kid who did the farming activity. So he gets what he needs, that student gets what he needs, which is coffee or whatever it is. And then there's that business, that retail business, that then all of a sudden has these tokens. But then what are they going to do with them? So if there's not like a liquidity pool to then give them money for those tokens, which was part of the plan, they also might have service requirements that they can then use those tokens to then get production services from a local film studio or marketing agency. And so we can move the tokens around like a currency, a value-based currency. It's just like but we have to create redemption value for the utility of them. That's all. So in the beginning, this plan that you've been doing, Rob, you have the coordinate to measure the internal team's services. So at a certain point, that ledger could then translate to co-op token issuance. That still doesn't mean anything if those co-op tokens don't have some redemption value for the people, because I don't see the liquidity pool appearing anytime soon. Unless this is why I wanted you to go into hypha with services and why DStudio is because then with hypha having a stronger case to eventually have like a liquidity pool or some sort of more value for hypha tokens, if co-op can be traded for hypha and DStudio honey can be traded for hypha, then that could be activated, or another organization within the ecosystem at some point. We just have to create those trade relationships between the tokens. But baby steps, it's like if we treat it kind of like you know, your buy 10, get one free, you know, stamp coupon, and we're just using tokens for issuance. So you buy a coffee, you get your tokens, or you buy services, you get your tokens. That's for the buyers, for the loyalty program part of it. And then there's all of the workers who are doing the work, who are also getting those tokens as deferred value. And then, but they might not need HSC services. They might not need these studio services. So we definitely have to, you know, that's why for me, holistic systems in principle would be able to help to build that HR network with the mental health layers too, and the coaching layers, so that then pretty much everybody, you know, so that we can kind of build we have to figure out what the people need, and then we have to figure out how to make the tokens have that utility to get them what they need if we're going to be issuing those tokens. But it starts with asking the people what they need. And so for the HSC co-op token utility, you know, we want to, so that's just the way I'm thinking about it, is like ask the community members what they need, and then like reverse engineering or figuring out how to like give utility, how to get them what they need through that utility of that token.
Yeah. Yeah, that popped in a few things to say, but I want to yeah, because right, I do think it starts with the need, you know, again, these needs and offerings, you know, it always starts with like what are our needs, you know, and then how do we help each other meet them. But I want to you know, I want to, before I talk more, I want to open the floor for Kim and Jonas, if there's any, if y'all have any thoughts.
Yeah, just saying that, yeah, the redemption value, or what you said, Basil, that feels right. And yeah, definitely baby steps. Anyway, Kimberly, you wanted to say something, I think?
No, I didn't. I'm good.
I think, yeah, I think that there's a way to look at the utility of the co-op token with just within like the you know, professional network value exchange group in a practical way, like you know, like to me it is just, you know, like it's you know, sort of a resource, right? So if you look at it in this practical way, which I do think starts with the needs, you know, you like, I think the way that if you start with the needs and you start with the idea of like what you were saying, Jonas, which was like having this personal, you know, because I think it needs to have that sort of like personal, you know, like we know each other, we trust each other, you know, kind of aspect to it. So, you know, if we're in a group, and we kind of have a group here, you know, it's like, oh, okay, I might need, you know, I need some help with, you know, some media stuff. So, you know, I go to Basil or I go to Kim. Somebody might need help with, you know, some business development, you know, guidance from me, you know, or some help with the website, so that, you know, they're going to come to me, and we're kind of like sharing within our little network anyways. And, you know, when I have a paying job that comes up that's within somebody's, you know, area of expertise, I bring on, you know, these folks again who are already here. But there's this like practical example for me where there's a way where sometimes I feel kind of overwhelmed, you know, because I have like, you know, folks are saying, hey, can I get like, you know, like I could use an hour of your time. Can I get help with this? Or can I get help with the website? Like I feel like I get maxed out because I want to help everybody, but I get maxed out, you know? And so there's also a way where I'm like, well, how, you know, I mean, maybe it's, I don't know if it's, you know, just it's selfish or what, you know, but like there's a way where at a certain point I'm contributing a lot to this community, and, you know, what, like, from a practical resources standpoint, even if we just talk about it as far as time, I'm not like, I don't really get overwhelmed with like sharing my knowledge or my expertise, you know, or like helping people. But there's a way where I'm like, well, I'm contributing a lot of time, you know, and I'm doing that in some ways to folks who aren't really contributing that much time back. And so how can I help everybody? Like, what if, like, is there a reward for, like if I'm contributing a lot to the community, then how can I, how is that actually measured? And then I think that's kind of, a practical, way of where, an honest way of where it starts. And then there's like, well, then there's just the sort of, that's the tokenomics, in a sense to me, or the logistics of how do you sort of, how do you make tangible that value, so what is the utility? I think that there's a way where like if you start there's a basic model that already works. I don't know that it's successful for what we're trying to do, but it's a model that already, that functions, which is a time bank, right? So that's like 1 hour. That's a currency is 1 hour of your time. And it has utility because I can buy an hour of somebody's time. And so I think if you start with that as kind of a basic model, we can just say, well, how can we make that more, like work well to reflect, the subtleties of what everybody's doing rather than just, everybody's, even though in like I love the idea that everybody's time is worth the same, but there's also a way where that in our current world, like that, it's not practical.
That's why the badges work. So, so for me to create an environment, like a workplace environment where, yes, the senior people and the people who are spent the most time, they're getting paid more for the same amount of time as a 20-year-old or 30-year-old, even though that 20 or 30-year-old's work is, on par. And that's the kind of the built-in tenure of organizations, in my opinion, like as we go through life, it should increase over time, but we shouldn't like come at 20 with the ego and the expectation that we are better than this 50-year-old person or 60-year-old person. So the way to sort of keep that is to like set a flat sort of, agree upon a flat rate for the service, for the role, but then, build in those bands for like, are you an assistant editor, a junior editor, an intern editor, a senior editor, an executive editor, or whatever, like, and then those bands have those baselines like they do in HIFA. But then you have badges that are that can have multipliers, like 10,000 hour badge. You've worked for the organization for 10,000 hours or whatever. So now every time
what do they multiply?
They have multiplied the amount of money you get. That's how the badges work. The crypto badges work is you're able to multiply the amount of tokens or payout tokens or voice tokens based upon how you design the badge. So if the badge is...
So then if you have a badge, and then you do the same amount of work in times as a junior, but you have a badge, you would get 100 instead of 10.
Or whatever the multiplier is, like a
okay.
or a 0.1% or a 10%, whatever the multiplier. So that way we try to like remove that sort of like us versus them phenomena and the hierarchical, the natural hierarchies that occur in corporations, and we try to make it more fair, but as people, people in their 50s and 60s, because of their experience, should be getting paid, extra for that, for their tenure. It's almost a respect thing. If we can build that culture of respect in an organization, because otherwise, those kids that are working now, if they expect that they should be getting paid the same, but then when they're older, they will not be getting paid more, then that's an agreement they're going to have to come to terms with. So we need to like figure out what is the culture that we're creating that creates a fair system that honors experience or like amount of time spent, but it doesn't like undermine the new talent, the junior talent, you know, feeling like they're lesser than, because they're not lesser than.
And yeah, and I want to just make a clarification here, just to make sure we're on the same page, that there's some ways where you're talking about here the tokenomics of like the tokenomics that's you know operating now in Haifa, and that is you know operating in D Studio, and the sort of tokenomics of we're an organization that is selling services. And I think that just to say that that the tokenomics I think works differently there, you know, than the tokenomics in we're a group that's exchanging, you know, sort of value. We're doing value exchange, you know, of like our skills or services, rather than selling, you know, to outside clients.
Right. So you're just creating barter arrangements of services, and you know, but in that world, you know, you know, then each of those individuals or each of those services would be its own. It's like its own token with its own valuation.
Well, I think that's why you have to create. I mean, I think it's essentially it's just to my mind, you're just expanding on the idea of a time bank, you know, and that's why, right? That's something that's an idea that I have, right, that I'm offering, which is some, you know, like this expertise framework, which is, you know, roughly in the same realm as the salary bands and everything, you know, but basically saying, you know, it's taking that base idea, you know, that barter idea, but like kind of taking it out of a market and kind of standardizing it in one sense, but then also adding, you know, another type of valuation, right? So that's if you have an expertise framework, right, and you have expert, intermediate, novice, right? Then I have my whole person resume. I have all the different things that I can do. I can email marketing, and I can do, you know, business development. I can do all these things. So I list all these things that I can do. You know, I know JavaScript, you know, at a novice level. I know PHP at an intermediate level. I can do, you know, and you know, right. And that's part of the trust building, right? Is that we have to, you know, first we have to self-label, you know, what I'm an expert at, what am I not? What does that mean to be an expert? But there's a way where it can be standardized, you know? And so if we say, okay, well then now an hour, you know, it's 10 tokens, you know, for an hour of somebody's time in the field that they're an expert. And that, you know, that's what that payment is, right? And it's, you know, 5 tokens for somebody who's an intermediate. And right, and it's maybe 2 tokens for somebody who's a novice, you know, because there's also ways where like I might be an expert at something, but I don't really want to be doing it. I'm bored with it. I want to try this new thing, and I'll take less exchange money. You know, there's also a way where you have to, you know, you have to sort of standardize, like, okay, well, you know, there, like, you know, there is a lot of value assignment, and then, but what I like about the coordinate is that it helps to solve something like I call the lawyer problem, which is like, why would a lawyer, you know, be in this group, you know, even because, right, like on the open sort of in our current market, right, they're like, why wouldn't they just go pay for services? And so if you have, you know, this extra like tip pool, you know, it can offset that a little bit, right? And this was something that Dominic Thomas said. I don't want to take credit for this, but he's talking, you know, he's like, if everybody has a certain amount of 100 tokens, you know, to give every month to everybody, and there's a lawyer in the group, right? Like I might give that lawyer, you know, 10 tokens every month, even if I don't ever, you know, get any value from that lawyer, because I want them in the group. I want them to stick around. So it's kind of a way to offset it, right? Yeah, but there's a whole, right, it is a lot of kind of like standardizing, community standardizing value assignments.
Right. So person A, Zoe, does some social media marketing stuff that has value. But she doesn't get paid in a liquid currency that she can use to pay bills, buy coffees, or anything. She's just receiving a token that will only has value for her to then get services from somebody else in the ecosystem, in that network.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there's a way where this pool, I think if you think about it as a community pool, and it's really a community pool of value and everybody's sharing, then there's also a way where within this ecosystem, I think, like fiat money can come in a fairly, fairly simple way. Meaning like Zoe, like, yeah, I can exchange tokens, with Zoe and get, help with social media services. But maybe Zoe's already given, like, contributed her minimum hours for the month, so she's like, hey, I'd like to, but I can't help because I only have a certain amount of that hours that I can contribute. I've contributed my sort of my mandatory ones, and I might be like, all right, well, how about I pay you? Okay, great, and that's kind of like a start of like selling services. But I think that you can just start and you can say, okay, well then how are we going to pay? I'm just going to buy co-op tokens, right? And then that money goes into the treasury and then gets distributed, right? So some of that most of that probably gets distributed to Zoe, but some of that can stay into the pool. And so I think if the pool starts to, and this is why, like, I don't think you need tokens if you have a small enough group of people doing it. If you just have a small enough group of people get together, hey, and we're just going to exchange services, and you can kind of track it. But I think if you want to build a larger pool, then that's why you tokenize it.
Yeah, I mean, like for instance, when I was beginning in the early days, I was looking at like what the media network that I was dreaming of, what the marketplace would be like, and it would be like an arcade or a food court in Thailand or China or whatever. And you show up at the arcade or the food court and you take your fiat money and you buy those tokens, those arcade tokens, or that card, so you can walk around, or those coupons so you can walk around the food court or the farmer's market and buy whatever you wanted to buy, whatever games you wanted to play within that space. So if HSC has a bunch of people, so you're still not seeing it as HSC is going to market to sell services for the wider world?
I think that is I think that still has to be thought of as a separate organizational unit, but it is connected, right? Like it is.
That's the only way to bring liquidity in.
It is connected, but I think that to me, I think that those have to be thought of as separate kind of organizational units, because I think that they have, I think if you start mixing it all into one, at least at first, I mean, to me, it could be just like, it's like our DAO, it's like Nestor, right? Like you have Holistic Systems Cooperative and you have Holistic Systems Services, and they're separate DAOs, but they're still operating in the same, kind of ecosystem.
have different tokens potentially, but the way, but let's like say a use case, like you see the HSC website and you see the service offerings, and you're like, yeah, I would like to get some services, and then there's then it's like this service is 50 co-op tokens. This service is 100 co-op tokens. So you have to take your fiat or your credit card and you have to buy tokens through Stripe to get those tokens. And then you have those tokens that you can use. There's plenty of marketplaces that work like this already for the last 100 years.
Yeah. And I think one of the, as you're speaking, one of the big reasons why, at least, first they need to be separate is because, what we've seen, like, there's not like the agency part, like that requires infrastructure, that requires like real, like that's an agency, right? So that's operations that has to happen, if you start serving clients as holistic systems, right? If we're serving clients as like, each of our own selves with strategic partners, then, then that doesn't require that same sort of group coordination and management and entity. So it's more doable in starting, right? But the value sharing co-op, that can go, that can go at its own speed. That can get up to speed and where we want it to be in a year, it could get there in 5 years, and nobody's gonna like, it's not gonna ruin people's lives.
It's an informal, so yeah, because I'm also seeing like cases for localized communities, how to like handle this sort of time banking value exchange in like just a local community that's not dealing with people globally for the most part. They might need some services from abroad, but mostly it's like localized. And so definitely for us to be able to help communities to create that structure is a good thing, for holistic systems to be able to help provide as well. So like figuring it out internally, it makes sense. Okay, yeah. Anyway, yeah, we could go for decades on the micro macroeconomics of this, but yeah.
Yeah. No, this is good, but I've had some helpful thoughts, come in as far as like, like practical operations. Yeah, which I can share. Again, I want to pause here and open the floor for Jonas and Kim if anything's coming in. I know Basil and I have sort of been talking for the last little while.
It's interesting to listen and to yeah, think about how this works. And I'm very interested in the tokenomics and how it all works, but yeah, I'm not sure whether we should, maybe we shouldn't talk much more about it. I don't know. Otherwise, I'm going to have a discussion whether the system, like for example, how Haifa has this is really good or not.
Yeah. I think that the basic model, is this collaborative, it's a co-op model, so it's like, right, co-ownership and management. So I think what's coming to me, as we're talking, right, as far as like practical steps, and what's coming into focus is that like the people who are here, right, we're like, I said this before, I think it's a good point, which is like, we're not like calling people in yet because we have something built. Like we were doing that, but then we realized, oh, well, we don't actually have like a, like the thing that we want to create. It's not really built yet. It's not operational enough to just be like, hey, jump on in and, sign up and become a member and you're in. So I think, what we're doing, and whoever's here and whoever we want to call in, you know, we're saying like, come, you know, build this thing. And to me, like practically what I think, you know, is coming through is that if whoever's here, right, keeps up, you know, with their, like the needs and offerings, right? So if everybody does this, I think it's a great idea. Everybody does this whole person resume, you know, then that starts, you know, creating a lot in and of itself, because that creates like this full picture of what everybody's skill sets are. And it creates this full picture of like what levels of expertise, you know. So I think if people do that, and that kind of goes with the needs and offerings, and then if we figure out, you know, like how are we logging these? You know, how are we logging the contributions? Because, you know, those need to be logged. You know, we need to have like this ledger, whether it's on chain or off chain. You know, and then like, what's a member? You know, like who's a member? What does that mean? So there's a way where I think if we engage in these practical steps of actually just trying to do this value exchange with each other, then we can get, you know, we can get stuff out of it, and just see like, you know, okay, let's like, how can we start, you know, counting, you know, this, logging this value exchange. And so I think that requires, I think, you know, it requires participation, essentially. You know, essentially it's contribution, it's participation from the people who are here. And, you know, I think if we do that, then how we get there will arise.
Can I, just maybe summarize a little bit and recap, and you correct me whether the system, how I see that is working. Like, so what or is it correct with the economic system that we basically, we might have tokens, and then we internally, we assign them to each other with coordinate according to, you know, how much each contributed to various things, and how we perceive that value assignment. But then also externally from a market, if someone wants to buy a service from any of us, they would basically exchange fiat money versus some of these tokens, and then say, Rob, you are doing, or Basil, you are doing one of your podcast services, and then they give you tokens, but the money that they use to buy those tokens, that goes into a shared pool, and then at the end of each cycle or whatever, or in certain intervals, money from that pool would go to different people according to how many tokens they have. Is that kind of how it would work? Like do you have that we have this short-term pool?
Yeah, I think yeah, in that summary, you know, to me, I'm hearing like both, you know, both sort of parts, you know, which is, I don't know what to call it, you know, parts or organization, you know, which is like people coming, you know, like selling services to outside clients, you know, and the sort of internal value exchange. I might think that I might think that the external selling to services part, like with using tokens for that, might want to wait. You know, I think that if people want to, if there's people who are sort of in the co-op and want to like pay somebody in the co-op for services, like
That should
like I want
be
an hour
covered
of your
then
time,
from,
like you're an expert at something, I want an hour of your software, I want you to look at my JavaScript, because it's all fucked up. And so, and I'm okay just like, maybe I'm all out of tokens or whatever. Like I'm okay just paying you, so that can sort of like, that can be a start to how to work with fiat money, because that can come into the pool. I think if we,
but
I think
does that one then go into the pool or does it go directly to you?
I think that's a good question, I think that it could go in. I think that's a good way to play with money coming into the pool.
Because I think if it does go directly to you, then the token doesn't gain any value. The token only gains value if it goes into the pool and then gets distributed to others.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that it's great if it goes into the pool. My thought would be to start that in this way where it's just in the ecosystem, but like, let's say like I have a client, and they're like, they have a job and they pay me, $1,000 and I need your help, like to whatever, to write some JavaScript. So you and I can just work that out, and I might just pay you whatever, $300. I think it might get too complex too quickly if we start putting like outside client money into the cooperative pool, I mean, it might just be easier. Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking of a little bit of, okay, how is it going to be at a stage where this one is running reasonably smoothly and like, half a year down the line or a year or whatever. Not next month. Also. And I guess for me, because that when we have that, plus then all like database with all our skills and everything, and then theoretically at that point, and we all know, okay, how to use coordinate and things like that. At that point, we could just invite people, they do their things, and it's kind of that there is already value in the token because some people, they get it from external clients and stuff. There's engagement because people want to have that token, so it's worth to engage. It's worth that internally people reassign tokens and stuff. And they see how it's working. People help each other out because that also gives you the tokens. But yeah, definitely it's not something that we need to do tomorrow.
Yeah. Just to say, I like that idea. I think that you're speaking well to it. Yeah, I don't know how to, I don't have yet like the perfect, sort of vision for how to incorporate that, that outside sort of client money in, right? And maybe it is a step-by-step process, but I do think that that's a huge key, right? That really creates like full-on utility for that token. So sorry, Basil, what were you gonna say?
Yeah. Well, it's like a traditional, like a cooperative. So you have a group of people, they form a cooperative, and then they all have voting power, and then the cooperative does something. It has a service or a product, or a retail product. And then that business operates, and that business is operated by the cooperative. And then everybody who's a member of the cooperative is either one or two things, either an investor member or a patron member, a worker. And both get value back from the dividends of the profits of the co-op. but that's when the co-op has a business plan. You're talking about something without a business plan, that there's no business. It's a way to facilitate people getting what they need without having to spend money, essentially. So they can put in their time to get tokens, and they can use those tokens to get other people's time. So the human time is an asset. The cash fiat is an asset. Both of those go into the pool whenever they go into the pool. Somebody provides services, tokens are generated. That's how HIFA works. When you provide service, tokens are generated, and they generate 3 kinds. But the 2 key kinds are like those native tokens, those utility tokens, and the cash tokens for so that we can create a world where where people get what they need in the cash, and then they get their futures in the utility token that they can spend at their own leisure later. But the main thing we're talking about is you have a pool that starts at 0, and then some money goes into it, and then some time and services go into it, and then you end up with like a tokens being generated. So you might have like, you know, 1 million tokens generated, but you know, but then you measure like how much has actually gone into that pool to generate those tokens. Is it $1 million worth of services in cash, or less? And then that becomes the value, the relative value of that token, where like the cash and human value put into the pool, you just take the tokens and divide it by that number, whatever that number
Yeah,
is.
it's just a percentage of what you basically are entitled to kind of the pool.
And so then you can like, so if there is any liquid profits or crypto profits at the end of a period, like the end of a year, then those can be distributed like a co-op does to the token holders based upon how many tokens they have. That's how the HIFA model works, how we currently have it set up. So that we have a system where like people get what they need to survive, but they're getting their full value measured in these other tokens. That was why I chose HIFA, because that's what I wanted to be able to like attract super talent, you know, passionate talent and high talent, and retain them. But how was I going to be able to do that when I could never afford their $500 an hour fees? But hey, what if they were willing to accept $100 an hour and the rest of that came in like futures? But we have to define what that future is, you know? And then the key part of the future was, it's not just like a stock, you know, future, it's a governance future. So the more effort they put into HIFA or DStudio or into this kind of consensus, sociocratic, flattened sort of co-op model, the more stake they put in, so the more voice they have for governance. So then why would they leave if they own and govern the company, you know, essentially? So that was how I was like, how do we create a modern agency that's owned by the talent for the talent without worrying about the talent always migrating to the next biggest thing? And that's what the current system is, the corporate system, is if this person is going to pay you more, you go over here, generally. But if you were like, maybe, you know, if you're getting paid like adequately and you're owning it, and you're like, then there's less likelihood that you would leave it if you're an owner of it. And so it's like, how do we make everybody an owner of what they do? And that was what I'm doing. That's my focus, which is a little bit different from what you're talking about, Rob, with this, which is more of a barter-based system to be able to measure, you know, a time banking system. It's just a modern time banking system, essentially.
Yeah, like that article I wrote, like a value bank. And I think you're right. I think there's 2 things, you know, that are here and possible, but I do think they're different. You have one, which is essentially like you're creating this resource pool, you know, that's going to help all of us professionals and entrepreneurs. And you know, that is coming from like it's like from a need, you know, And then you have the separate thing, which is the business, which is just this co-op. It's a co-op professional services agency.
Mm-hmm.
So we could say like, okay, well, let's just, forget the bartering and just, create this co-op agency, for us and sell our services. So we could do that.
Provide the services and for like, and
provide the services, and then we're all, we're gonna have this thing. But like,
That's our product.
but now we've seen, but like, who's creating it? Where's the investment to create that come from? Because that investment, it has to be, that's what, sort of tried before, and there was not enough investment. There wasn't financial investment. There wasn't enough time investment.
right. So what I'm for what like I've been talking with Daniel Swid and then Kim and Troy and Pavel, sort of driving this, that we're going to put together a sales page, a funnel just for podcast services, just one narrow product. But then those people might need marketing services, but we have another page for that so that we can spin up like single offer subscription or payment systems, even though it's all on like a D Studio plus kind of, system. So it's easy on the admin side and it's easy on the economic side. We're allowing like someone like Zoe or you to just say, hey, I can offer this. And now I can spin up this offering and I have the added value being part of this network. But for that system to work, which is part of my modeling like 5 years ago, is like the sales coming into Jonas's, sole proprietor company, single effort. Maybe he has a small team around him, but there's money going into for his services. But he's part of this network. Instead of the network owning Jonas and telling Jonas what to do and how to do it, like that's not the culture we're creating or the model we're creating. But there definitely has to be an economic. So Jonas has to decide how much he's comfortable with sharing with the network. But instead of him just giving that share value to the network, that gets redistributed amongst the owners of the network, which is also Jonas, because Jonas is also an owner of the network. Jonas is taking it, saying like, yeah, I'll give like X%, somewhere between 5 and 20. Some companies might, we might spin up companies that really just help to boost the network, and so they're giving like a majority of the money to the network. But most individuals, they, the jobs come in and they give a percentage away to the network. But the difference between how we're doing it and how Fiverr or Upwork does it is those percentages go away to Upwork, to their shareholders. So they're making billions of dollars, Fiverr making billions of dollars. But those talent that are providing the services aren't getting a piece of that. They're not getting stock in Fiverr or Upwork. But what we're doing is we're making a system so that then we can spin up a bunch of service providers, and then a portion of each transaction goes to the network treasury or a sub treasury within the network. But instead of it just disappearing from that person, they're like, well, I'm just going to leave the network so I can get 100%. We're not taking it from Jonas. We're trading Jonas some of the network tokens for the percentage going off. So the more more flow, more volume of traffic, more sales he gets, then he's helping to grow the overall network. And each one of those individual partners is putting in their amount all over the place. Someone in New York is going to be doing more than someone in Tulum. But the more they do, the more of the native tokens they get. That's how the unit system works. So the more volume you get, the more of those unit tokens you're getting of that sort of distributed multi-sector network, that DAO, that unit DAO. And so that's the system I'm looking at, is like, how do we help how do we create a security blanket for all of us, even though Jonas can only do like one narrow line of things. Basil can only do one narrow line of things. Rob, you too. So that you can do what you're good at, but you're getting diversified through the network because you're giving a piece of the pie to the network, which was made up of a diversity of humans and companies. And then those network tokens that you get have utility, like legitimate utility, and potentially even liquidity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that I think it's sort of two separate, it's two separate yet connected solutions to the same problem, which is like, I'm an independent contractor, freelancer, or entrepreneur, and I need to make money, right? If I go and I get a job for working at a corporation or something, it's not necessarily it's a solution for somebody who doesn't want to be doing that, so, right, that's we're creating that solution, and there's like, it's just we're talking about two different ways. One is basically saying, okay, we're going to come together as a group and we're going to, pool our resources. We're going to de-silo, and kind of pool our resources in this way, in a collective pool, right? That's gonna then, make us all, that's gonna help everybody. And then the second solution, that's one solution, and then the second solution, is like, now we're gonna come together as a group and we're going to sell our services. Whether that's like, and whether you're thinking about it as an agency model, or whether you're thinking about it as a platform model. It's either of those, it's different sort of business models, but it's still, it's still a co-owned and operated entity, right?
It's like Upwork, but you own it. If you do services on our platform, then not only do you get the money or the value that you need from the services, instead of that 30% that normally is going to Upwork or whatever it is, you're not losing that money. You're getting a piece of the pie of the network. So that way, when you're not working and you're holding these tokens that are backed by the entire platform, then that can help you get through the lows, because
Yeah, totally. And
yeah,
that's
it's
the
basically
idea.
a mutual aid co-op Upwork kind of thing. And then we can also help each other find jobs, which maybe goes a little bit more to Rob than that we, as a collective also do a little bit, give each other, like, help each other getting these jobs, but basically a mutual aid.
So the way
insurance
that,
thing.
And to me, I think that they work together. They are interconnected. And the reason that I think you need number one, is the value bank, is because that starts to solve a problem I have right now, right? The problem I have right now is that this network is not created, but I have to eat and pay rent tonight. So unless, right, D Studio can get me, enough work, right, like now, then I still need to go. I'm still in my own sort of silo. I still need to go, and I need to find, jobs, and I need to sort it out while the bigger, platform or agency is still getting created. And so I think that this value bank is a way for us to start to come together, step by step, to help each other, right, in this here and now. But I think it's connected because then it creates, right, it starts to create, like, those resources then meld together and go into the agency and go into that network, right? Because if I've been working, like, for example, if I've been working with Basil, if I've been in this value bank, in this shared community with Basil and with Jonas and with Kim, for 2 years, like, we're going to be able to come together and work, we're going to trust each other. And we're going to know who we can, who we work well with and who we don't. We're not just coming in fresh. So anyways,
well, this year is going to be where we can kind of start to because now we're officially going to market with the studio. You know, so in the next month we'll have the site up, but we're already like having meetings with people who want podcast services. And invariably, they also need brand development, marketing services, and a website. You know, so that's one of the product lines that we're going to start hammering on hard to try to bring, you know, sustainable, projectable, subscription-based liquidity into the system, and then start figuring out how to like carve that up effectively. And then internally, for all of the people that are doing the work on those podcast provisions or marketing provisions, then we're going to attempt to practice this need now model to facilitate growth of the overall platform. Because if everybody just takes everything they want, 100% cash, then we don't get anywhere. There's no investment going into the platform or the network. But if we can get the majority of people who are working with this to accept a cash value, you know, that's maybe like 50% of the, you know, on average across the board. You know, some people are taking more, and like someone like me is giving more. Maybe Rob, you know, you're giving more than you're taking from your value pool, but the overall average is that all of the work being provided, 50% of that is being held for like growth of the platform, to invest in development, to invest in, you know, whatever services are needed to help grow the network so we can get more and more volume of services coming through the system, so we can like start to stabilize more number of people, being me, you, Kim, Zoe, Jonas, and others, Troy, Daniel, you know, and start to like, we're you know, we have to be realistic, and we have to be looking at like, you know, starting with like $500,000 a year of like guaranteed economy, cash economy coming in, and higher, to be able to support enough people, you know, over the course of a year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
have business case models that bring in millions of dollars. Otherwise, we're just going to be struggling to survive.
Yeah. So then the question for me, you know, is then, and you know, and taking a look at the time, yeah, is that, you know, is that what do we then want to do, since we're at the holistic systems meeting? What do we, you know, what do we think the people here, you know, I mean, Basil, what do you think, you know, and Jonas, about, you know, the plan for the value bank, you know, the shared resource pool, because that is, you know, right, like as we're saying, you know, at this point, it is a separate entity, you know, and it's a separate sort of solution to solve, you know, the same problem we're all working on.
Yeah.
You know, so meaning like, is that something that you know, for you, Basil, it's like, okay, well, does that make sense for you to put effort at, you know, given the stage that you're at with the studio?
Well, all I see is that every single person is like cash poor, and they can't survive. So until we solve that problem of bringing in fiat liquidity or crypto liquidity, then everything else becomes a moot point. You know, so I'm really just like hard focused on like having cash on hand to be able to pay for services, not the full value. We can do part deferred, part in token,
Yeah.
but at least something. And the reality is for a young person like Zoe, and even you, like, you don't need $100 an hour right now. Even if that's the value you're providing, like $30 an hour it goes a long way. You know, $50 an hour.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. But I need those hours, right?
You need the continuity. So
Yeah, and so right now, you know, today, right? Like I think you're saying, and until, you know, there's a large enough amount of deal flow coming in, then there's still you know, a group of people who are cash poor. And so that's why I'm saying, okay, well, then if we're cash poor, what are we not poor on? And then how can we, you know, pool that together
Well,
in a way that's gonna help?
if there are some that are not immediately cash poor, and like I'm just wondering whether the system will work if there's some how to say that, something to kickstart it or so. Like if there's in the beginning a bit of influx, let's say okay, like right now I still have a job, and although it will run out in 3 months. Basil, let's say your podcast business, it takes off. And then if we put in, let's say, I don't know, 1%, 5%, or whatever amount we feel safe with, will that help to get others actually going? I'm just wondering whether it's like, how does it work in a situation like that?
Yeah. So in the case of a so I look at the platforms, I look at the businesses as engines, economic engines that have inputs and outputs, so the podcast service is like one engine of many that I visualize for our for our Upwork like system.
Yeah.
And if we can figure out how to so to start with, for the engine to run, it needs to have like mechanics, it needs to have certain things, it needs to have project management, it needs to have accounting, customer service, editing services, development services. And so to start, it's like, what is the, how many people can this engine, this small little, lawnmower engine support? And so that like our core is, the goal is to get our core like stabilized so that we're not like struggling to pay bills. Step one. Then it's like, and that's only if they're providing like valuable services to help keep the engine running. Then that engine can support that small group of people. And then we can start to look at like, how do we grow more engines? How do we start up more engines? Or how do we build like this bigger platform? The only way it's going to make sense for you, Jonas, to take a piece of your economy as like investment dollars to go into the pool, or for this podcast engine to take a piece of its profits to go into a pool, is if when the money goes into the pool, then those utility tokens are issued, and there's a chance that risk that we're taking by putting the dollars and time and effort into that pool is going to yield return at the end of the day. So this is like an investment of time and energy to build the platforms to drive economy, to drive security. But it's only going to work if the engine, whether it's Haifa or HSC or D Studio or even a smaller engine like a subsidiary, an engine within D Studio, if it by itself, we just have to like make sure that the investments work. because otherwise your money might be a better use for you. But if you have excess, you know, and then you put the excess into a pool, and then you also get to, like, you know, and then you're also working on developing that system, so then you're getting voice in how it gets used and how it gets developed. Then we just need to decide, like, what do we need money for? Do we need to build something, you know, and then maybe that goes to building that. You know, since we don't have any money, I'm not focused on what we need money for, more than like, how do we bring in money, like without like begging for investments and grants. You know, how do we just use our skills to like bring in? So I did the math, and if we have 40 to 50 paying customers for an average of $1,000 or $1,200 a month, $1,000 a month for video podcast or some sort of content services, or even web services. But if that's the sort of the average amount of the subscription, 12,000 a year for a business, if we have 40 of those or 50 of those, then that gets us to $500,000. And with $500,000, we have some security there. You know, and then we grow from there. Then it's about, okay, now where do we invest to keep growing, to you know, get more, to diversify our offerings and increase the amount of flow we can handle. You know, because obviously for me, I can't handle 40 or 50 productions a month, so I have to distribute that labor.
So I mean, I think that's great. I mean, I think everything you're talking about, you know, again, it's that either you call it a, you know, cooperative agency or you know, or the platform, you know, but again, I think that you're talking about that. You're talking about the cooperative business that sells services to customers, to clients, which is different than, you know, a resource, you know, pool value bank, a resource sharing value bank. So, you know, so just to say, like, we came into the meeting, and, you know, we got that first initial clarity was basically like, what is the operations plan? You know, what are we building and how do we get there? And so we're talking about, you know, like here we are talking about building. Those are two separate things that we would be building.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I want to make sure, what are we, you know, like, what are we talking, you know, like, what do you
Prioritize. It's about prioritizing.
Well, what do you want to, like, because I'm not, you know, like I'm working on the value bank, right? Like,
But how are you supporting yourself by doing that?
I'm not supporting myself by doing that.
The inherent problem.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, I'm not right. That it's the idea is to be. It's something that's being built, right? I'm building it. It's not how I'm supporting myself, but I'm not supporting myself by
it's not
D-Studio
how
either.
you support yourself right now, but it's how you hope that it will help you to support yourself in a year or whenever it's the engine is running.
Yeah.
So it's a future investment.
Yeah, just like D-Studio is.
It's been an investment for a long time. Yeah. Investment.
Right. So we're both building things. We're both basically saying, like, we want to build something that we wish was already here. You know?
Yeah. I just know that that it's easier to build something when you're not worried about, like, how you're going to pay rent. It's easier to focus when you have, like, your baselines met. So for me, I'm looking at how to meet the baselines for as many number of people. So then we can, like, build to our heart's desire, our dreams, without the risk of ending up on the street. So it's about priority. So
you're just saying, yeah. So what I'm hearing you saying is, like, okay, well, creating this, you know, the cooperative business, you know, you feel like is a higher priority for you.
I try to look
and
at
building the resource sharing pool value bank. That's fine. That's fine. I think this is good clarity.
it's a higher priority for everybody, including you, that to have cash coming in that's not completely sidelining you from what you're trying to do.
Yeah, but we're both trying, but we're both sort of saying that's what we're trying to accomplish. That's what we're
Yeah.
both trying to accomplish.
So
And
by
you're
having-
just, I mean, essentially you're saying, like your feeling is that you want to, you think that your time is best spent, working on the business and creating that and having money coming in that way. And I'm saying, okay, well, I want to, not even the best way. It's like the way that that I'm inspired to spend my time is working on this value bank. And also, just working on my own stuff. I mean, I'm still an independent contractor until I get, enough money coming in from some, business that I'm a part of. I'm still an independent contractor, and I'm still developing what it is that I do,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's part of the thing. It's like you have this thing on the side that you feel is yours, and you're not sharing that, wherein actually what you have on the side is something that is should be part of an agency platform network to be able to bring in those service provisions, and
Yeah,
more gigs. That's what I've been trying to do from the beginning. But it's like, you are like a lot of people, you have your skill set, and you can get gigs for that skill set, but you're not seeing how to like, make that like a network operation, how to bring that operation into the network rather than just
well,
keeping
first of all, I'm still developing whatever it is my skill set is, like that takes time, right? Like I'm coming into more and more clarity about, okay, well, this is my skill set, and this is what I want to do, and this is what I don't want to do, and this is how I sell it. I mean, that's taken a long time.
right.
So, I mean, essentially we're saying like, where are we spending our resources? And I mean, I don't know. I hadn't heard this before, I mean, are you saying like, hey, Rob, you should just come into D Studio, and start working in the, spending your efforts in the agency rather than the value bank? I mean, that's kind of what I'm hearing.
That's not how I solve problems. I look at what your dream is, and I look at how to like make that puzzle piece of things work together. So it's like, okay, Rob wants to create the value stream bank. Okay, well, D Studio is built for that too. So it's like there's benefit here to figuring this stuff out.
Yeah.
But
And it's not that I want to build that. I want to solve the problem that we're trying to solve. That's what I want.
So by having like real life projects, paying customers coming in for services, and then for us to figure out internally how to perform those services, how to distribute the labor, how to pay the people in both cash and token.
Right. Which is how to like run the agency. That's what you're saying. Figure out how to run the agency.
Which is how to run the agency and how to set value for people's services in real life use cases rather than hypotheticals.
Yeah. Right. And that's what I'm working on and developing, my own, and now, yeah. And so I think what you're saying is like, I should, I mean, it's a way where, essentially it's like, what I'm hearing is like, oh, well then, if D Studio is picking up, then come in, as a partner in D Studio and start,
we're already in it, but yeah, but that's what I'm doing. It's like, how do we bring in the cash so that then the people can start to like focus on building this stuff, because it's not easy what we're trying to do here.
So yeah, what I'm hearing is that basically you're saying cash first to free us up to focus on other things that we want to do, and Rob is doing it the other way around, focus on what we want to achieve, and then hopefully it will come. Right. What about we each say like for a minute or so, like what you think are the next practical steps that you would want to see being done, or what that you would possibly want to do? I don't know the answer for that myself, but I'm just that's what's in my head as a question, at least, and I'm curious.
I think that's a great question. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a great question. Yeah, well, what are the next practical steps? Yeah, I mean, I think at least from, you know, where my mind's at now, I think I, you know, said it as far as, you know, if the value bank, right, is going to be, you know, something to, you know, that we're going to spend, you know, resources working on. I think the next practical steps is, you know, is to create this minimum way of like, of sharing resources, you know, figuring out. So, you know, I think the next practical step would probably be for every person to, you know, as best they can, do this whole person resume.
Right. Like Keenan.
I think that's a great next practical step. Kind of, yeah. I mean, I think that then, you know, and then maybe the next practical step is figuring out, you know, how to, yeah, you know, I think that's a good next practical step.
So like,
I'm just gonna pick one.
So like, I'm gonna bring that into it because Keenan wants help with his podcast, but he doesn't have enough cash to pay the actual value. But he has that whole person resume, right, of what he can do for the co-ops. So he, you know, he has a little cash, and so I'm you know, he sent me an email. I need to like analyze it more. But the plan is we are able to test this in-house, how can Keenan get what he needs at a high value with less cash on hand, and in him banking or him putting his time value for those services that he can do into an asset time bank that we measure. So figuring out how to keep track of that stuff, so then we can access that. When we have a job over here that needs website development and we need some services, we already know how much do we have banked from like members of the co-op for those like key services. So this is something that we can test right away with solving Keenan's podcast problem, you know, where he's paying D Studio X, you know, a month, $300 or $400 or something a month. But the value that D Studio is putting in is maybe closer to 1,000 or more. So how then do we so then we're measuring that excess of deferred value that means that he's subscribing to like putting his time on the table for certain services that we can pick and choose from in the future. So figuring out how to like measure the people's time value and to keep track of that time bank, you know, that's like asset. Like we can put cash into the pool and we can put like, I'll spend, you know, 5 hours a month and that value is $100. That's $500 a month of Basil. It goes into the pool that the pool can say that it has in its asset pool, you know. So we definitely need to figure this stuff out. But my proposal is that we do it in real life cases like this, that we start to like really like model it out with like real cases where we have cash coming in and people's time coming in, and we start figuring it out. So like your action plan for that makes sense to do like that whole system resume or that whole person resume. So we can measure like what are their skills, what are their levels for each skill. So for me, it would be like Photoshop, right, Premiere, After Effects. And then I would put like on a scale from 1 to 10, what is my proficiency with each? Am I, you know, Photoshop, I'm like an 8. Premiere, I'm like an 8. After Effects, I'm like a 5, you know, and then I start to put my time in. What is the value, market value for each of those services? photography, film, all of those different things, web development, all of the different sub things. And then we have like a list for each person on all the things they can do, what their proficiency level is, and then at least what they think their perceived value is versus what we do market research on to sort of figure out what the market value is. And that way we get a repository for each person for all of these things. And that helps you to sort of create this like holistic systems, value sharing database effectively.
Yeah.
And we're able to use that in real life case with like.
Well, that helps. Yeah. I mean, that helps everybody in all these scenarios. I think that's true. Because then that gives everybody the baseline, right? So for how to link up, because that's what we have to, whatever way, yeah, we have to be linking up with each other. And then, it's a matter of, figuring out, okay, then if you can do that, then you can start to assign tokens, right? And I think that these first people, like, we're not doing it in this way where it's like, well, the tokenomics has to be perfect and the tokens I earn now, have to be worth, but it's to start to figure that out. Because even if, and I mean, this is me, you all can speak to yourselves, but if there's a way where I'm getting like a token reward, and I know that it's within a system that's like, that is, that is being tracked, that is like sort of like reasonable, then at that point I'm like, oh, I want to participate because I want a reward and I want a token, I mean, just, lots of, for me, it's like, I guess it's like a game, right?
Sentimental.
There's something, but there's something about, about that, again, and it doesn't have to be, perfect, but it's an acknowledgement, right? It's nothing else. It's an acknowledgement, of what I put in, and
Right.
then what and then it starts to become something I can get something for.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering also whether there's just something like a Kickstarter amount or something that ignites it, that whether that would be really useful, because like, even if the actual amounts that we have, the base engine running are really low, like it's still an incentive and a recognition and a first kind of feeling of, hey, cool, that I can get something there by doing something, even if it's maybe in the beginning quite undervalued, but it's much nicer than nothing, or than, but yeah. I definitely also I like both of what you're saying, and to try out try this whole thing out in a working environment, that would definitely be awesome. I do hope that the things with DStudio do really go well.
Well,
yeah.
It's already at the point where like money's on the table, and I've like I'm approaching my limit. Plus I'm going to be like in motion, so I'm going to need some extra potential like support, because I'm going to be I guess like in mid-May I'm going to go to Portland for half a month, and then maybe leave my workstation computer with Troy, and work with him on the ground for a minute, and then I need to go to the UK, I think, or I'm supposed to go to the UK at the beginning of June, and that's going to like make it increasingly hard for me to just be like in the cave doing like computer work, for so I'm going to have to like spread out like editing tasks and other, editing and publishing and quality control and, copywriting and all of that stuff. I'm going to have to we're going to have to like systematize it, to distribute that labor.
Yeah. And you have to also find that labor, right?
Well,
and that's another thing, right? Like this value bank, right? It can be this place that starts to feed, feed that labor in.
Yeah, I mean,
You know?
having like the first, my hope is that maybe Trent Brown can, I've had him do some, podcast editing. You had, when we first met, you had like some editors around you. What's your friend in San Francisco? What's his
Oh
status?
yeah, Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
What's
same thing. He's still there. He just has to get, a certain rate. He has to get his rate.
yeah. So I should, so we should check back with him because he's okay with this culture that we're creating. He's like Zoe.
He's in, yeah, he's in the culture. Yeah. He's one of us, He's just
My requirements
he's in the
is
same challenge as all of us. He wants he's to create this and is doing the best he can, but he has 2 kids and right. Yeah.
yeah,
So
that's-
okay, so I mean, I think what we're saying, as far as like it sounds like we have at least like some kind of consensus around like what the next practical step is. I don't know that we have like a whole roadmap, kind of filled out, but that does seem, like having folks, do this whole person resume. Because what we can do with that then is, right, and this would be something that's more practical as far as like, hey, who wants to help with this job, is like we can start to break that down in a way like I already have up to a point, start to break down, all of those pieces, and put them in a database.
yeah, because it's like this.
Put them in like, I mean, it may need to go beyond, Notion to something. I mean, Airtable is probably like the perfect tool for it.
I think we should also be looking at Cascade that has like strong AI, because then we can input stuff and we're like, okay, who in our network can do editing, and then it'll immediately come back and like, hey, what are their proficiency levels? Okay, great.
Yeah, but Cascade is not specifically a, it's like looks like a project management coordination tool rather than a database.
But what we need to be able to do is to match people to projects. So
Yeah.
we need to like get their resume and their proficiencies in all of the different tasks. And then, I mean, this was something from, this was like the vision of D Studio from the beginning, is like we would have a global network of, say, editors, but we would have all of their unique specialties. We would know their proficiencies. We would know their experience level.
Yeah.
We know where they are, when they like to work, how they like to work, all of that.
Yeah. But let's start it, let's start it. No, but you're right. I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, we're talking about the same thing, I mean, it's right. Like, I mean, I made a, wherever it is, the list, it's like the skill sets, the expertise level. And I think the third thing is like the desire level.
Yeah, the passion, and desire.
Yeah, desire now to work on it, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, and the rich data, like when we're getting people's data, we need to know if they have children, because we know if they have children, their dependencies are like way higher than people who don't. So it's not that we're not going to give them the work, but we're being aware that like they need to support kids. So we're aware of that. To try to help them do that. That's the goal. Think of it like this as well. Like once we have the database of the people, then it's like chairs. Then it's like an orchestra, and you have your chairs of all of the different musicians, all the different specialists. And we'll be able to find our first chairs at any given point in time. Who's our most experienced top talent in this unique, thing, JavaScript coding, After Effects editing, whatever it is. And then that person can then potentially, because we need to be able to solve problems, and we need to be able to bring up people that have less experience so they get more experience, but we need to have our strongest, people to help sort of guide that specialty, you know, so that we
Yeah,
can.
I know. We know. We've been that. I know. We've
But
been
right now, I
talking
need our
about
top.
we've been talking about this for a long time now. We get it.
So right now I have live
It's-
budget to give to live people for, we need our top Instagram, you know, people, marketing people, you know, we need, you know, our top, you know, web development people. We need our
yeah, I mean,
top
so we've got to find these folks somewhere.
okay, so, yeah. So that's
Um,
that's the goal, is because we're getting increasing demand for services coming in from afar, and either we capture that money or we don't. And so for us to capture it, we have to have the service providers in our network. Yeah.
All right, so we have a first practical step. I mean, I don't know that we have a, quite an operations plan, but I do think that it's I think that it's important to again to clarify and say that there's two separate solutions here to the same problem that we're working on, and they are interconnected. I think they're very much interconnected, but they are going about it in it's two different models. So I think part of it is seeing like how interconnected they are, and not. But there's, how do we integrate them? Because it's this, like
Think of it like a cell. Go to biology for all this stuff. You have your internal cellular stuff, and you have your external stuff, and you have this layer between the two. So what you're talking about is internal members trading with members. And what I'm talking about is bringing in nutrients from external to go in to like help the internal work even better. So it has the resources it needs. It has the proteins it needs.
Yeah, I just mean, I get that. I just mean, and I think that's a beautiful, like way that those two work together. I do think they work together. I think I'm asking this question, and maybe it's a rhetorical question at this point, or a sort of question for us to sit with, is like in the practicality, right? Like how do we get both going?
It's simple.
That's the question. How do we get both going? Oh, okay.
Cash liquidity, and then you have our internal core of people to perform those tasks. And what we're asking those people to do is to work with both cash, payout token, and native tokens, utility tokens, to measure their deferments, so that we can start to model this internal token issuance for services. And then those people have the tokens. They have the co-op tokens or whatever the tokens are. Then while they are accruing those tokens through providing gig work, then we are figuring out how can they then use those tokens to get other services within the network through trading those tokens for services.
Okay, so I mean, right, so you're saying like cash liquidity, but like bring it to a practical sort of
reality,
or like how does that, like,
because
then what do I do?
Giving people free tokens to trade amongst themselves? You're the benefactor, you're the philanthropist here. How do they even get the tokens in the first place? I know what you're doing in Coordinate, but that's different. That you're being the benefactor by giving them tokens that then they can like give around. That's a whole different thing. That's an internal teamwork model mechanism for valuing teamwork. But when you're talking about like a network of people coming in, they come in with 0 tokens. They start with 0. But they have to provide, and they're like, "Hey, I would like some tokens, but I can't buy them. I can't put in cash, but I will say I can provide these services valued at this amount." And then the co-op can agree and say, "Okay, we'll give people tokens. It's like for future work." So then they get tokens by like putting their time on the table, by banking their time. And then they're getting the tokens, and then they can use those tokens to get services right away from other people in the network, in the timeshare, in the value sharing network. But at a certain point, they still have the ledger over here of how much time they're owed for those tokens. So we had to figure out that sort of mechanism. How do people get tokens in the first place? So for me, it's easy if we stick to the sort of hyphen model that you get your tokens by deferring some of the cash value of your service. So instead of taking 125 an hour, you're
But
taking
all of that is dependent upon cash coming in from clients.
No, because it could just be like a pro bono gig where like, okay, this NGO needs some help. We would like to
So
help.
that still doesn't solve, I mean, it gets me tokens, but it still doesn't solve
It
my
gives you
immediate
tokens,
problem.
It doesn't solve your need, and you can only justify that as a co-op if the co-op agrees to help this organization. Like, yeah, we'll help them. We know that it's not bringing money in here, but it's going to be really good for our marketing, or it's going to be really good for our positioning. So it's like,
Yeah, but
it's
who
like
is the co-op? I mean, the co-op isn't, I mean, right now there's like there's D Studio, and that's,
Yeah.
that's it. There's
That's
not like, there's not the co-op right now.
yeah. So yeah. So chicken egg situation. I want to create like energy through currency flows to then help us to operationalize this this system so that we can grow a cooperative network of people and sustain them economically, and sustain them economically. Otherwise, they're not going to be around. They're just going to like, be with the wind, based on where they can get money,
But people, yeah. I mean, again, I think we're sort of talking about, we're going around and around, and we're talking about two different, methods, again, that are interconnected, but we have to, like we're talking about today, there's like, what is the operation plan? What are the next steps? Where are our goals, for the rest of the year? So we have to get practical here. Like, what is the practical step? I mean, I know we laid out one practical step, but we also, I think we're also sort of talking about like, these are the steps for, for putting this together, and these are the steps for putting this together. And that's fine. We can be, working in tandem and in parallel. But I think we're still talking about, right, there's kind of like two plans that are running in parallel. I think that we can agree to that they're not separate, but they are two different models. And they have different, sort of some of the steps are going to be different.
Okay, yeah, we'll need to think about it. For me, it's not two different things. It's just you can't do one without the other. You can't just operate.
Sure, you can. You can have an agency, a services agency, and that just that's run as a co-op, or you could just have a value bank. I don't know. I mean, I don't, that's not the way I see it, though. I mean, I do see them as like completely interconnected. I'm just trying to like figure out how to move, like what is the plan moving forward? That's who's doing what. These are practical things.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to just solve that all right now in this moment, but yeah.
From my side, I'll go to the tokenomics course, and then I can tell you more after that.
Yes, I know that looks pretty cool, that tokenomics course. Yeah, so you're gonna go and like learn. Yeah, I mean, I read over it a little bit, just like learn about token engineering, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So should we stick with our win of deciding that next practical step for everybody is to create this whole person resume?
Yeah, I mean, making it is another story. Like I know that Keenan put a lot of time into his. I don't know if you can kind of like extract from that, like how to guide people in doing their own.
Yeah, that would definitely be good to have some sort of guide
Section.
instructions.
Some sort of like, yeah,
some-
template.
I
Yeah,
just
I'm
did
work-
that. I just did one in AI with 20 prompts, but it would have to be edited. I'm sure I'd have to go in and really look at it. But I'd like
Oh,
to
yeah,
see
good
keynotes
idea.
and I'll work on it.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine like if each, you know, like what skill, you know, what things can you do, and we give them examples,
Mhm.
and then there's a line for them to write the skill, and they're like, but then we need to like go deeper than that. We're like, okay, on a scale from 1 to 10, what is your proficiency with this, in your opinion? So we sort of see what they say. And then like, what is the value, if you know, it could be non-available, but like, what do you feel the perceived value of this is, you know, prorated hourly, you know, kind of hourly value in their mind for those skills. And that we don't need to have that, but we definitely need to have the skill and the proficiency. And we need it to be richer than just saying video editing. Video editing doesn't mean shit. It needs to be like, what video editing tools are you good? What is your proficiency in each one of those?
That's a resume anyway, but when you say whole person resume, I thought you meant something more than that. Like it's really deep, really a deeper thing where we're really looking at everything about ourselves that might be
They like to
valuable to
work.
the system.
That's
Yeah.
right. Like for example, you know, like if I, you know, I have experience, you know, doing intuitive wellness coaching, right? And I was in this wellness field for a long time. You
Yeah.
know, so that's not what I'm going out and I'm not selling that, you know, and that's not like my
Right.
primary area of work now, but I have that, you know,
Yeah.
and I can do film editing, right? You know, but that's not, you know, exactly what I'm, you know, but I'm very proficient at it, right? So I put that. What else, you know, right? Like Newman can
Yeah.
teach qigong. People have, right? Like it's everything, you know, and it's sort of like, yeah. So that I think that's the idea is that we're opening up to all of the different kinds of, you know, of value that a person brings and all the things that they might want to be doing, you know,
Yeah, I
but
think that's just
they're novice.
it's a great exercise anyway for
Yeah.
any person. So, okay.
Yeah. Well, why don't we, I mean, okay, here's my thought on that, because what I was going to do, you know, what I'm doing is I'm working on mine and I was just sort of using Keenan's as a, you know, sort of a inspiration. I mean, how do the four of us feel about, you know, working on that? Like I'll share Keenan's and I'll share mine. It seems like, you know, from our discussion here, we all know, you know, we get the basic idea, you know, pretty clearly. And maybe if the four of us do that, then we'll have like these examples, you know, and maybe we can even, you know, like we can look at how each of us puts it together. And then I think if we bring back, you know, if we have like 5 of those, right, then we can say, oh, okay, this was cool how you did this. Oh, I like, you know, this, and then we can kind of create a template that we can give to everybody.
I would just kind of do it on our own, but look at whatever
Yeah.
Keenan did. Yeah, I know I'm doing it anyway. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll work on, I'll do my best. Yeah, because we need to crack this code so that when we're onboarding people, we can gather all that information when we sort of send them in to HSC, right?
Oh, here's the, well, yeah, I think that's, you know, it's like essentially we had this and he's basically like the member profile, you know, but I think now we're saying like, it's, you know, we're saying like, we really need to get granular. And if we can get the more granular we can get, then the better we can match up with each other. And the better we can match up with each other, then the more value we're going to be able to bring each other.
Yeah.
You know,
I'll do mine and I'll put like proficiency levels because I feel like at the end of the day, you know, we need to know in the network who to go to when we're looking for like master classes on something or we have like a really important VIP client. So we need to know who is the top person in the network.
So this is his that you're showing us right now?
This is mine. His is here. Let me
share yours. Maybe
cool.
maybe if you have like on either on the minutes document or something, you can put links to each of those.
Yeah, well, let me, I mean, I can share Kenan's with you all. I don't know if I'm have permission to put it on the meetings document, but
Okay, share it with us and share
here, well,
your.
why don't I, yeah, I'll put here, this is I'll put it in the chat, and I'll put mine in the meeting notes. Of course,
Okay.
the bottom of it is still Kenan's, but I'll take that all off. But
Cool.
I like the idea, because I think that we've been in this discussion. I like the idea of just having the four of us like do this, because we're each going to have our own kind of, different take on it. And I think, rather than try and, force a certain, let's see. All right. And all right, so I put that. So how does that sound?
What's the question? What? Sorry.
Well, it sounds like you're. Oh, I was just how does that sound, Jonas? You up for that?
For making the resume?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have access to your document.
Oh, yeah, probably because I did not give access.
Yeah, viewers probably. Okay. But yeah, no, sounds good to me.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, there was something I actually made. Where is it? Oh, this is kind of a start. I'll put this document in here. This is kind of a start of a. Oh yeah. These thoughts that I had on this expertise framework. I'll put this in the meeting notes as well, but I'll drop it in the chat here. And the reason that I'm doing that is because, my thought here, I started to think about like what were the different pieces that could go on it, and I thought that let me see. Yeah, not only like the expertise, but yeah, like what services are you interested in like working on? What services or packages, what departments or circles are you interested in leading or having a role in? Well, it's interesting. I forgot writing this. Oh, departments, roles, skills, specific tech programs and platforms, services that this entails. Oh, yeah.
Yep, cool.
I'm
I've
not
got to
sure.
run.
Yeah, thanks
Approaching
everybody.
almost midnight here.
Yeah. Yeah, let me put this on the meeting notes.
Yeah, was a really good time. Thanks, guys. See ya.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks, Jonas. Appreciate it.
It was real.
I did enjoy it.
Thanks, everyone. Anything else, Basil, Kim?
Well, Rob, you and I need to talk, but you just let me know when you're ready. And I still can take over that YouTube role. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
we'll
I
talk
actually
about
added in, and Basil, I know just have to like get I actually wrote in the roles in the, here, let me just show you this one thing. So we have like roles now in this member portal. And so I actually wrote, so Basil, the calendar manager, because there's actually a few places where it would be helpful, to write the write-up. So you can check that out if you like. And then there's, right, manage video recordings and transcriptions. Yeah, we need to, I don't know, there's just, as you know, there's a lot to coordinate.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting are you getting the Zoom AI notes, like digest from these meetings? Are you getting that sent to you?
No, I don't have that set up, but I dropped them in Otter, and then
Oh my God, Zoom AI is amazing.
yeah, I just,
Much better.
Huh.
It'll just like, so like right now in Hypha's system, like we have it set up so that like, or at least from